homeless boy carried an injured girl, Miles. He had no idea she was an Alpha King's daughter. The winter wind cut through the narrow alleyways of downtown Seattle like a blade, carrying with it the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. 14-year-old Marcus Webb huddled beneath a torn cardboard box behind Giuseppe's Italian restaurant, his thin jacket doing little to shield him from the cold. His stomach growled, a constant companion these days, as he watched the steam rise from the kitchen vents above him. 3 years. It had been 3 years since his mother died from pneumonia, leaving him alone in a world that had no patience for homeless children. The foster system had tried twice, but Marcus had run both times. The first home had too many kids and not enough food. The second had a man with hard fists and harder words. The streets were dangerous, but at least here, Marcus controlled his own fate. He pulled his knees closer to his chest, trying to preserve what little warmth his body generated. The dinner rush at Giuseppe's would end soon, and Tony, the night cook, would bring out the leftover bread and sometimes a container of pasta. Tony never said much, just set the food down, nodded, and went back inside. It was the closest thing to kindness Marcus had known in months. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please subscribe and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from. Now, let's get back to Marcus's journey. The sound of screeching tires shattered the relative quiet of the alley. Marcus's head snapped up, his survival instincts immediately alert. A black SUV had stopped abruptly at the mouth of the alley, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Car doors opened, and Marcus heard shouting, angry, urgent voices that made his heart race. "Find her! She couldn't have gone far. The boss wants her alive, you idiots." Marcus pressed himself against the wall, making himself as small as possible. Whatever was happening, he wanted no part of it. He'd learned long ago that the best way to survive was to be invisible. Then he heard it. A soft whimper, barely audible over the idling engine and shouting men. It came from behind the dumpster, just 15 feet from where Marcus hid. Against every instinct screaming at him to stay put, Marcus crawled forward, his hands scraping against the cold, wet pavement. Behind the dumpster, crumpled like a discarded doll, was a girl. She looked about his age, maybe younger, with long dark hair matted with blood. Her expensive-looking coat was torn, and her face was pale in the dim light. Her eyes fluttered open as Marcus approached, and he saw fear there, raw and desperate. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please help me." Marcus glanced back toward the mouth of the alley. The men were getting closer, their flashlight beams sweeping across the walls. He had seconds to make a decision. Every rational part of his brain told him to run, to leave her, to save himself. But something in her eyes, that same desperate fear he'd seen in his own reflection countless times, made him stay. "Can you walk?" he whispered urgently. She tried to push herself up but gasped in pain, clutching her side. "My leg. I think it's broken." Marcus cursed under his breath. The men were maybe 30 seconds away. Without thinking, he hooked his arms under her shoulders and knees, grunting as he lifted her. She was heavier than he expected, or maybe he was just weaker from hunger than he realized. Either way, he had no choice now. "Stay quiet," he hissed, and began moving deeper into the alley, away from the searching men. Seattle's downtown area was a maze of alleys, fire escapes, and forgotten spaces, a labyrinth that Marcus had learned to navigate over 3 years of survival. He knew every dead end, every unlocked basement window, every route that the police and other dangers didn't patrol. Now carrying this injured girl, he put that knowledge to use. He ducked through a gap in a chain-link fence, the girl biting back a cry of pain as he jostled her injured leg. Behind them, he heard the men spreading out, their voices growing more frustrated. "She's gotta be here somewhere. Check behind those dumpsters again." Marcus kept moving, his arms burning with the effort of carrying her. He cut through the back lot of an abandoned warehouse, then down a narrow passage between two buildings that most people didn't even know existed. The girl had gone quiet, her head resting against his shoulder, and for a terrifying moment, Marcus thought she might have passed out, or worse. "Hey," he whispered, "stay with me. What's your name?" "Elena," she murmured. "Elena Volkov." "I'm Marcus. Just hold on, okay? I know a place." The place was an abandoned subway station, one of several that Seattle had closed down decades ago. Marcus had discovered it 6 months earlier and had kept it secret, even from the other street kids. The entrance was through a rusted maintenance door in the basement of a condemned building. It wasn't warm, but it was dry and hidden, perfect for hiding from whoever was hunting Elena. By the time Marcus maneuvered them through the door and down the crumbling stairs, his arms felt like they were on fire. He gently set Elena down on the pile of blankets and cardboard he'd accumulated, then collapsed beside her, gasping for breath. "Who were those men?" he asked, once he'd caught his breath. Elena's eyes were closed, her face twisted in pain. Bad people. Very bad people. No kidding. Marcus examined her leg in the dim light filtering through the grates above. It was swollen and bent at an odd angle. He'd seen enough injuries on the streets to know it was definitely broken. "This is bad. You need a hospital." "No!" Elena's eyes snapped open, and she grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "No hospitals, no police. They'll find me." "You could die from this," Marcus said bluntly. "Or lose your leg. Then I die." Her voice was firm despite the pain. "Better than what they'll do if they catch me." Marcus stared at her, trying to understand what kind of trouble this girl was in. Her clothes, even torn and dirty, were expensive. Designer labels he'd seen in store windows. Her coat alone probably cost more than Marcus had seen in his entire life. She wasn't a street kid. She was someone important, someone with money and power, and someone wanted her badly enough to send armed men after her. "Who are you, really?" he asked. Elena was quiet for a long moment, her breathing shallow and pained. Finally, she spoke. "My father. He's important, powerful, and dangerous. The men who took me, they want to use me to control him." "Took you? You were kidnapped." She nodded weakly. 3 days ago. I was leaving school and they grabbed me, threw me in a van. They were taking me somewhere, but the car crashed. I ran. She touched her leg gingerly. Didn't get very far. Marcus processed this information. A kidnapping. Powerful father. Men with guns searching the streets. This was way beyond anything he'd dealt with before. The smart thing would be to leave her here and disappear. Let her family's problems be their own. But as he looked at her pale face, at the way she tried to hide her pain, he thought of his own mother. In her last days, sick and dying, she'd made him promise to never lose his humanity, no matter how hard life got. "You're a good boy, Marcus," she'd whispered. "Don't let this world make you cruel." "Okay," he said finally. "No hospitals, but I need to set that leg, or it'll heal wrong. It's going to hurt." "I know." Elena's jaw clenched. "Do it." Marcus had learned basic first aid from a paramedic who sometimes brought food to the homeless camps. He'd watched the man set a broken arm once, had paid attention to the technique. Now, he gathered the straightest pieces of wood he could find and tore strips from an old shirt. "Bite down on this," he said, offering her a rolled-up piece of fabric. What followed was one of the worst experiences of Marcus's life. Elena's muffled screams echoed through the abandoned station as he pulled her leg straight and splinted it. Tears streamed down both their faces by the time he finished. Hers from pain, his from the horror of causing it. When it was done, Elena lay gasping, her face slick with sweat despite the cold. Marcus sat back, his hands shaking. "Thank you," she whispered after a while. I'm sorry you got involved in this. Yeah, well. Marcus wiped his eyes. Too late now. They sat in silence for a while, the only sound their breathing and the distant rumble of traffic above. Marcus knew he should be thinking about his next move, about how to keep them both safe. But exhaustion was pulling at him. He hadn't slept properly in days. Marcus? Elena's voice was soft. Why did you help me? You don't know me. He thought about that. Why had he helped her? It would have been easier to walk away, safer to stay invisible. But maybe his mother had been right. Maybe holding on to your humanity was the only thing that separated you from the darkness. Because someone should, he said simply. Elena reached out and squeezed his hand. My father will reward you. When he finds me, he'll give you anything you want. Money, a home, anything. Marcus almost laughed. Your father doesn't even know I exist, and those men are still out there looking for you. Let's focus on staying alive first. But even as he said it, Marcus felt something shift inside him. For 3 years, he'd been alone, surviving day by day with no purpose beyond finding his next meal. Now, suddenly, he had something to protect. Someone who needed him. It was terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. Get some rest, he told Elena. I'll keep watch. As Elena's breathing slowly evened out into sleep, Marcus sat in the darkness of the abandoned station and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Above them, the city continued its endless rhythm, unaware that in the forgotten spaces below, a homeless boy had just made a decision that would change everything. The night stretched on, cold and unforgiving, but for the first time in 3 years, Marcus Webb wasn't alone. And somehow, that made all the difference. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, typical for Seattle in January. Marcus had dozed fitfully through the night, jerking awake at every sound, his body tense with the expectation of discovery. But the abandoned station remained undisturbed, a pocket of safety in a dangerous world. Elena woke with a groan, her face immediately contorting in pain as she tried to move her splinted leg. Marcus was at her side immediately, helping her sit up against the wall. How do you feel? He asked. Like I got hit by a truck, she muttered, then managed a weak smile. But alive, thanks to you. Marcus rummaged through his backpack, a battered thing he'd found in a dumpster months ago, and pulled out a half-empty bottle of water and a granola bar he'd been saving. He offered both to Elena. You need this more than I do, he said when she hesitated. We should share it. They split the meager breakfast, and Marcus tried not to think about how little food he had left. He'd been planning to hit up the soup kitchen on 3rd Avenue today, but that was out of the question now. He couldn't leave Elena alone, and she certainly couldn't walk. Tell me about your father, Marcus said, trying to distract both of them from their hunger. You said he was powerful. What does that mean? Elena was quiet for a moment, as if weighing how much to reveal. My father is Viktor Volkov. He owns Volkov Industries, shipping, real estate, investments. He has connections, important ones. Marcus had heard of Volkov Industries. Everyone in Seattle had. The Volkov name was on half the buildings downtown, including the massive headquarters tower that dominated the skyline. He'd even slept in the shadow of that building a few times, never imagining he'd meet the owner's daughter. So, you're rich, he said, stating the obvious. My father is rich, Elena corrected. I'm just his daughter, his only child. Her voice carried a weight that suggested being Viktor Volkov's daughter wasn't as glamorous as it sounded. Is that why they took you? For ransom? Partly. Elena's hand moved unconsciously to a small pendant around her neck, a silver wolf's head that had somehow survived her ordeal. But it's more complicated than that. My father has enemies. People who want to hurt him, control him. I'm his weakness. Marcus understood weakness. On the streets, any weakness could get you killed. What about your mother? She died when I was 8. Cancer. Elena's voice was flat, emotionless in the way of someone who'd learned to bury their grief. After that, it was just me and my father, and his security team, his business associates, his endless meetings and deals. I barely saw him. I know what it's like, Marcus said quietly. To lose your mom, I mean. Mine died 3 years ago. Elena looked at him with new understanding. Is that how you ended up on the streets? Marcus nodded. No other family. Foster care didn't work out, so I ran. He shrugged, trying to make it sound casual, though the memories still hurt. Been surviving on my own since. You're brave, Elena said softly. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. Marcus stood up, wincing as his stiff muscles protested. I need to go out. Get us some food and supplies. Will you be okay here for a couple hours? Fear flashed across Elena's face. What if those men find this place? They won't. Nobody knows about it except me. Marcus grabbed his backpack. But just in case, there's a back way out through that tunnel. He pointed to a dark passage at the far end of the station. It comes out near Pike Place Market. If anyone comes, hide in there. Marcus, wait. Elena fumbled with her pendant, then pulled it off and held it out to him. Take this. If something happens to me, if you need help, take this to my father. He'll know it's mine. He'll believe you. Marcus stared at the pendant. It was heavy, real silver, probably worth more than he'd seen in years. I'm coming back, he said firmly, not taking it. Keep it. You'll give it to your father yourself. He left before she could argue, climbing back up through the maintenance door and into the cold morning. The streets were waking up, early commuters hurrying to work, shop owners opening their stores, the homeless population stirring in doorways and under bridges. Marcus kept his head down as he walked, constantly scanning for any sign of the men from last night. They'd be looking for Elena. Probably had people watching hospitals, police stations, anywhere a hurt girl might turn up. But they wouldn't be looking for a homeless boy. That was his advantage. Invisibility. His first stop was the soup kitchen on 3rd Avenue, where he managed to pocket several rolls and 2 apples while the volunteers weren't looking. He felt guilty about stealing from people who were trying to help, but Elena needed food, and beggars couldn't be choosers, literally. Next, he hit up the free clinic on James Street, slipping in through the back door he'd used before when he'd had a bad cough last winter. The supply closet was usually unlocked, and today was no exception. He grabbed bandages, antiseptic, pain relievers, and a pair of crutches someone had left behind. His backpack bulged with supplies as he slipped back out. The whole excursion took 90 minutes, and Marcus was heading back to the abandoned station when he spotted them, 2 men in dark suits, showing a photo to people on the street. Even from a distance, Marcus could see it was Elena's picture, probably from before her kidnapping when she'd looked healthy and clean. His heart hammered as he ducked into an alley, pressing himself against the wall. The men were systematic, working their way down the block, questioning everyone. They had the look of professionals, cold eyes, efficient movements, the kind of men who wouldn't hesitate to hurt someone. Marcus waited until they moved on, then took a longer route back to the station, doubling back several times to make sure he wasn't followed. By the time he climbed back down into the abandoned subway, he was exhausted and paranoid, jumping at every shadow. Marcus! Elena's relief was palpable when she saw him. I was so worried. We've got a problem, Marcus said, dropping his backpack and pulling out the food. They're showing your picture around. Professional guys, not just street thugs. They're not giving up. Elena's face paled. My father's men, or the kidnappers? Does it matter? Either way, they're looking for you." "It matters," Elena insisted. "My father's men would take me home. Keep me safe. The kidnappers will." She trailed off, but the fear in her eyes finished the sentence. Marcus distributed the food, and they ate in tense silence. He watched Elena struggle with the simple act of eating, her hands shaking from pain and exhaustion. The splint he'd made was crude at best, and he knew she needed real medical attention. But how could they get it without exposing her? "There might be a way," Marcus said slowly, an idea forming. "I know a doctor. Well, not a real doctor. He lost his license years ago. But he helps street kids sometimes, patches them up, no questions asked. He's not exactly legal, but he's good. Can you trust him?" Marcus thought about Dr. Chen, the elderly man who ran a makeshift clinic out of his apartment in the International District. He was gruff and often drunk, but he'd saved more than one homeless kid from infection or worse. "As much as I trust anyone," Marcus said honestly. "Then let's do it." Elena tried to stand, using the wall for support, but immediately collapsed with a cry of pain. "Tomorrow," she amended weakly. "Let's do it tomorrow." That night, as Elena slept fitfully beside him, Marcus lay awake and thought about the strange turn his life had taken. 24 hours ago, his biggest concern had been finding enough food to get through the week. Now he was harboring a kidnapping victim, evading armed men, and planning to take her to an unlicensed doctor in the worst part of town. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. "You're a good boy, Marcus. Don't let this world make you cruel." "I'm trying, Mom," he whispered into the darkness. "I'm really trying." Above them, the city hummed with life. Thousands of people going about their normal lives, unaware of the drama unfolding in the forgotten spaces below. And somewhere out there, men with guns were still searching, getting closer with every passing hour. Marcus closed his eyes and tried to sleep, knowing that tomorrow would bring new dangers. But for now, in this moment, he and Elena were safe. And sometimes, on the streets, that was the best you could hope for. The journey to Dr. Chen's apartment took 3 hours, a trip that should have taken 30 minutes. Marcus had fashioned a crude crutch from a piece of pipe and some padding, but Elena could barely put weight on her injured leg. They moved slowly through back alleys and side streets, stopping frequently for Elena to rest. The rain had started again, a cold drizzle that soaked through their clothes and made Elena shiver uncontrollably. Marcus gave her his jacket, even though it left him in just a thin t-shirt. He'd been cold before. He could handle it. "Tell me about your life," Elena said during one of their rest stops, huddled in a doorway while Marcus checked the street ahead. "Before your mom died. What was it like?" Marcus was surprised by the question. People didn't usually ask about his past. "Normal, I guess. We had an apartment in Ballard. Nothing fancy. Mom worked 2 jobs, waitress during the day, cleaning offices at night. We didn't have much, but we had each other. She sounds like she loved you very much." "Yeah." Marcus's throat tightened. "She did. She was always tired, always working, but she made time for me. Helped with homework, played cards, told me stories." He smiled at the memory. She had this way of making everything seem okay, even when it wasn't. "My mother was like that too," Elena said softly. "Before she got sick. She used to take me to the park, just the 2 of us. My father was always busy, but Mom made time. After she died, everything changed. My father threw himself into work, and I became an obligation. Something to be managed and protected, but not really seen." Marcus understood loneliness. He'd been surrounded by people on the streets, but had never felt more alone. "Is that why you were at school when they took you, not at home?" "I go to Lakeside Academy, boarding school." Elena's voice was bitter. "My father thought it would be safer if I lived there during the week, fewer opportunities for his enemies to get to me, Guess he was wrong. They continued moving, Marcus supporting Elena's weight as she hobbled along. The International District was waking up. Shop owners hosing down sidewalks, delivery trucks unloading supplies. The smell of cooking food making Marcus's stomach growl despite the rolls he'd eaten earlier. Dr. Chen's apartment was above a Chinese grocery store, accessed through a narrow stairway that reeked of garbage and mildew. Marcus had to practically carry Elena up the 3 flights of stairs, both of them gasping for breath by the time they reached the top. He knocked on the door. 3 quick raps, then 2 slow ones. It was a signal Dr. Chen had taught the street kids, a way to identify themselves as people who needed help rather than trouble. The door opened a crack, revealing a weathered face and suspicious eyes. "Marcus, what you want?" "I need help, Dr. Chen. My friend, she has a broken leg. It's bad." The old man's eyes moved to Elena, taking in her expensive clothes and obvious pain. "She not street kid. Where she come from? Does it matter?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "She needs help. Isn't that what you do?" "Doctor." Chen studied them for a long moment, then sighed and opened the door wider. "Come in, quick, before neighbors see." The apartment was small and cluttered, every surface covered with medical supplies, books, and empty bottles. It smelled of antiseptic and alcohol. Dr. Chen cleared off a couch and gestured for Elena to sit. "Let me see leg," he said, his English heavily accented but clear. Marcus watched as Dr. Chen examined Elena's injury, his gnarled fingers surprisingly gentle as they probed the swelling. Elena bit her lip to keep from crying out, her knuckles white as she gripped the couch cushions. "You do this?" Dr. Chen asked Marcus, indicating the splint. "Yeah, I tried to set it straight. Not bad for street medicine, but bone is broken in 2 places. Need proper cast? Maybe surgery." He looked at Elena seriously. "You need hospital." "No hospital," Elena said firmly. "Can you help me or not?" Dr. Chen muttered something in Chinese that Marcus suspected was a curse. "I can set bone properly, make cast, give medicine for pain and infection, but if bone not heal right, you have problems later. Walk with limp, maybe. I'll take that risk. Your funeral." Dr. Chen stood and began gathering supplies. "This going to hurt very much. You." He pointed at Marcus. "Hold her down. She going to move. Maybe hurt herself more." What followed was worse than the first time Marcus had set the bone. Dr. Chen worked with practiced efficiency, but the process was brutal. Elena's screams were muffled by a towel Marcus held over her mouth, tears streaming down her face as the old doctor manipulated the broken bone back into alignment. Marcus held her shoulders, whispering apologies and encouragements, feeling every bit as helpless as she looked. Finally, it was done. Dr. Chen wrapped Elena's leg in a proper cast, white and solid, then gave her a handful of pills. "For pain," he explained. "Take one every 6 hours, and these," he handed over another bottle, "for infection. Very important. Take all of them, even when feeling better." Elena nodded weakly, her face pale and drawn. The pain medication was already starting to work, her eyes growing heavy. "She need rest," Dr. Chen said. "Can stay here tonight. Tomorrow you take her somewhere else. I don't want trouble." "Thank you," Marcus said sincerely. "I'll pay you back somehow." Dr. Chen waved a dismissive hand. "You good kid, Marcus. Always helping others, even when you have nothing. That worth more than money." He paused, then added, "But you in danger, I think. This girl, she important to someone? Bad people looking for her?" Marcus nodded. "Very bad people." "Then you need to be smart. Can't hide forever. Eventually, must choose, run, or fight." Those words stayed with Marcus as Elena fell into an exhausted sleep on Dr. Chen's couch. The old doctor had given them sanctuary for one night, but tomorrow they'd be back on the streets, still hunted, still in danger. Marcus sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass, and thought about Dr. Chen's words. run or fight. But how could a homeless 14-year-old boy fight against men with guns and resources? And where could they run that Elena's kidnappers, or her father's enemies, wouldn't eventually find them? The answer came to him slowly, a desperate plan forming in his mind. It was risky, maybe even stupid, but it was the only option he could see. They couldn't hide forever, and Elena needed more help than he could provide. There was only one person who had the power to protect her, to end this nightmare. They needed to find Viktor Volkov. But how did a street kid get an audience with one of the most powerful men in Seattle? Especially when that man's daughter had been missing for days, and he was probably surrounded by security, suspicious of everyone. Marcus looked at Elena sleeping peacefully for the first time since he'd found her. She trusted him. She'd put her life in his hands. He couldn't let her down. "I'll figure it out," he whispered to himself. "Somehow, I'll get you home." Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the streets clean, but unable to wash away the danger that lurked in every shadow. And somewhere in the city, men were still searching, still hunting, getting closer with every passing hour. The clock was ticking, and Marcus knew their luck wouldn't hold forever. They left Dr. Chen's apartment before dawn, while the city was still dark and quiet. Elena moved better with the proper cast and pain medication, though she still needed Marcus's support. The old doctor had given them a real crutch and extra pills, refusing payment with a gruff, "Just stay alive, that's payment enough." Now, as they made their way through the empty streets, Marcus explained his plan. "Your father's office is in the Volkov Tower downtown, right?" Elena nodded. "Top floor. But Marcus, you can't just walk in there. Security will stop you at the door." "I know. That's why we're not going through the door." Marcus had spent the night thinking this through, remembering every detail he knew about the Volkov Tower. "I've slept near that building dozens of times. There's a loading dock in the back. Deliveries start coming in around 6 a.m. We can slip in with the morning rush. And then what? The elevators require key cards. The stairwells have cameras. I know a guy who works maintenance there. Tommy. He's homeless like me, but he got a job cleaning the building at night. He owes me a favor." Marcus didn't mention that the favor was for sharing his food when Tommy had been starving. "He can get us upstairs." Elena was quiet for a moment, her crutch tapping against the wet pavement. "You've really thought this through." "I've had time to think." Marcus glanced at her. "But there's something you need to know. Once we get you to your father, I'm gone. I can't stick around for questions or rewards or whatever. I'm just going to make sure you're safe, then disappear." "Why?" Elena stopped walking, forcing Marcus to stop too. "My father will help you. He'll give you a home, money, anything you need." "I don't need charity," Marcus said, more harshly than he intended. "I've survived this long on my own. I don't need some rich guy feeling sorry for me." "It's not charity. It's gratitude. You saved my life. I did what anyone should do. That doesn't mean I want to be some rich man's pet project." Marcus started walking again, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. "Let's just focus on getting you home." They reached the Volkov Tower, just as the first delivery trucks were arriving. The building was a gleaming spire of glass and steel, 70 stories of corporate power that seemed to pierce the low-hanging clouds. Marcus had always felt small looking at it. Now, knowing he was about to enter it, he felt even smaller. The loading dock was controlled chaos. Workers unloading boxes, clipboard-wielding supervisors shouting orders, forklifts beeping as they moved pallets. Marcus and Elena slipped in behind a group of delivery workers, keeping their heads down and moving with purpose. The key to not being noticed, Marcus had learned, was to act like you belonged. They made it past the loading area and into the service corridors without being challenged. The building's interior was all polished marble and expensive art, even in the back areas where the public never saw. Marcus felt acutely aware of his dirty clothes and unwashed hair, of how much he didn't belong in this world of wealth and power. There, Elena whispered, pointing to a man pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway. Is that Tommy? Marcus recognized the thin, nervous-looking man in his 40s. Yeah, wait here. He approached Tommy carefully, not wanting to startle him. Hey, Tommy, remember me? Tommy's eyes widened in recognition, then fear. Marcus, what are you doing here? If security sees you, I need your help, just for a few minutes. Marcus kept his voice low and urgent. I need to get to the top floor. It's important. Are you crazy? I could lose my job. This is the best thing I've had in years. I can't. Please. Marcus rarely begged, but he did now. Remember when you were starving last month? When I gave you my food, even though I was hungry too? I'm calling in that favor, Tommy. I need this. Tommy looked torn, his hands gripping the cleaning cart so hard his knuckles turned white. Finally, he sighed. You're going to get me fired. Come on, quick. He led them to a service elevator, using his key card to access it. This goes directly to the executive floors, but there's cameras everywhere up there, and security is tight. Mr. Volkov's daughter was kidnapped, and everyone's on high alert. I know, Marcus said. That's why we're here. Tommy looked confused but didn't ask questions. The elevator ride seemed to take forever, Marcus's heart pounding as the numbers climbed higher and higher. Beside him, Elena was tense, her hand gripping her crutch so tightly her fingers were white. The elevator dinged, and the doors opened onto a luxurious hallway. Thick carpet, expensive artwork, floor-to-ceiling windows offering breathtaking views of Seattle. And at the far end, a massive set of double doors with Viktor Volkov, CEO, engraved on a brass plaque. That's as far as I go, Tommy said nervously. Good luck, kid. Whatever you're doing, I hope it's worth it. The elevator doors closed, leaving Marcus and Elena alone in the hallway. Almost immediately, 2 security guards appeared from a side room, their hands moving toward their weapons. This is a restricted area, one of them said sharply. How did you get up here? I need to see Viktor Volkov, Marcus said, trying to sound more confident than he felt. It's about his daughter. The guards exchanged glances. Sir, if you have information about Miss Volkov, you need to go through proper channels. We'll escort you to... Dad! Elena's voice rang out, clear and strong despite her exhaustion. She stepped forward, letting go of Marcus's supporting arm, standing on her own despite the pain it must have caused. The guards froze, their faces going from suspicious to shocked in an instant. One of them spoke urgently into his radio, while the other stared at Elena as if seeing a ghost. Miss Volkov? Is that really... The double doors burst open, and a man strode out. Viktor Volkov was tall and imposing, with steel-gray hair and sharp features that reminded Marcus of a wolf. He wore an expensive suit that probably cost more than Marcus had seen in his entire life, and his eyes were hard and calculating until they landed on Elena. Then everything changed. The hard businessman disappeared, replaced by a father who'd thought his daughter was lost forever. Elena? Dad! Elena hobbled forward, and Viktor Volkov closed the distance in 3 long strides, catching her in his arms as she collapsed against him. Dad, I'm okay. Marcus watched the reunion, feeling suddenly like an intruder. This was a private moment, a family moment. He started to back toward the elevator, but one of the security guards blocked his path. Not so fast, kid. We need to know how you're involved in this. Viktor Volkov looked up, seeming to notice Marcus for the first time. His eyes were red with tears, but they were sharp and assessing as they took in Marcus's appearance, the dirty clothes, the thin frame, the wary posture of someone used to running. Who are you? Volkov's voice was controlled, but Marcus heard the steel underneath. Nobody, Marcus said quickly. I just helped her get here. I'm going now. Marcus saved me, Elena said, still clinging to her father. The kidnappers, their car crashed and I ran. I was hurt, and Marcus found me. He's been taking care of me, keeping me safe. Dad, without him, I'd be dead or back in their hands. Viktor Volkov's expression shifted as he processed this information. He gently helped Elena to a nearby chair, then turned his full attention to Marcus. It was like being pinned by a spotlight, and Marcus fought the urge to run. You saved my daughter's life, Volkov said slowly. I did what anyone would do, Marcus replied, echoing what he'd told Elena. No. Volkov shook his head. Most people would have walked away. Most people would have called the police or left her to fend for herself. But you, a boy with nothing, risked everything to help her. He took a step closer. Why? Marcus thought about his mother, about her last words, about the promise he'd made. Because someone should, he said simply. For a long moment, Viktor Volkov just stared at him. Then, to Marcus's surprise, the powerful businessman's eyes filled with tears again. Thank you, he said, his voice breaking. Thank you for bringing my daughter back to me. You're welcome. Now I really should... Marcus, wait. Elena struggled to stand, her father immediately supporting her. You can't just leave. You have nowhere to go. I've been managing fine. You've been surviving, Elena corrected. There's a difference. Dad, Marcus is homeless. He's been living on the streets for 3 years. He gave me his food when he was hungry, his jacket when I was cold. He carried me for miles, even though he could barely stand. He set my broken leg and found a doctor and kept me safe from the men who were hunting me. And he did all of that, expecting nothing in return. Viktor Volkov's expression changed as he absorbed this information. He looked at Marcus with new eyes, seeing not just a dirty street kid, but someone who had demonstrated courage, compassion, and selflessness. What's your full name, son? Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb. Volkov seemed to be committing it to memory. How old are you? 14. And you've been alone for 3 years? When Marcus nodded, Volkov's jaw tightened. No child should have to live like that. Marcus, I owe you a debt I can never fully repay. You gave me back the most precious thing in my life. Please, let me help you. I don't need help, Marcus said automatically, but even he could hear how hollow it sounded. Everyone needs help sometimes, Volkov said gently. There's no shame in accepting it. I'm offering you a home, Marcus, a real home, with food and warmth and safety, a chance to be a kid again instead of just surviving. Marcus wanted to refuse. He'd been independent for so long, relying only on himself. Accepting help felt like weakness, like giving up. But as he looked at Elena's hopeful face, at Viktor Volkov's sincere expression, he felt something crack inside him. The wall he'd built around his heart to survive the streets. I don't know how to be anything but what I am, he admitted quietly. Then we'll figure it out together, Volkov said. You saved my daughter. The least I can do is give you a chance at a real life. Marcus looked at Elena, who nodded encouragingly. He thought about his mother, about what she would want for him. She'd never wanted him to live on the streets, to be cold and hungry and alone. She'd wanted him to have a future, opportunities, a chance to be happy. Okay, Marcus said finally, the word barely a whisper. Okay. Elena's face lit up with joy, and even Viktor Volkov smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his severe features. Good. That's settled then. He turned to his security team, who had been watching the entire exchange with varying expressions of shock. Get medical for Elena immediately, and someone bring Marcus some clean clothes and food. He's family now. Family. The word echoed in Marcus's mind as security guards sprang into action, as Elena was helped toward a private medical room, as someone draped a warm coat over his shoulders. Family. He'd thought he'd lost that forever when his mother died. Maybe, just maybe, he'd been wrong. The next few hours passed in a blur. Medical personnel examined Elena, confirming that Dr. Chen had done a good job setting her leg but recommending surgery to ensure proper healing. Viktor Volkov never left his daughter's side, holding her hand as doctors worked, his relief and love palpable. Marcus was given his own examination, the doctors clucking their tongues at his malnourishment and various untreated injuries. He was fed, real food, hot and plentiful, and given clean clothes that actually fit. A shower in Viktor Volkov's private bathroom revealed just how dirty he'd been, the water running brown for several minutes before finally clearing. When he emerged, clean and fed and wearing clothes that didn't smell like garbage, Marcus barely recognized himself in the mirror. He looked like a normal kid, not a street urchin. It was disorienting. Viktor Volkov found him standing in front of that mirror, staring at his reflection with something like wonder. "You clean up well," the man said with a slight smile. "I forgot what I looked like," Marcus admitted. "Without the dirt, I mean." Volkov's expression softened. "Marcus, I want you to understand something. What I'm offering you isn't charity, and it's not just gratitude, though I am more grateful than words can express. You showed incredible character in helping Elena. That kind of character is rare, and it's valuable. I'd like to give you opportunities to develop it further." "What kind of opportunities?" "School for one. A proper education. Elena attends Lakeside Academy. It's one of the best schools in the state. I can arrange for you to enroll there as well." Volkov held up a hand as Marcus started to protest. "I know it's overwhelming. You don't have to decide everything right now. For today, just accept that you have a safe place to sleep and food to eat. We'll figure out the rest as we go." Marcus nodded slowly. "What about the men who took Elena? Are they still out there?" Volkov's expression hardened. "My security team is handling it. We have leads on who was behind the kidnapping. They'll be dealt with." The cold certainty in his voice sent a chill down Marcus's spine. This was the other side of Viktor Volkov, the dangerous side, the side that had built an empire and crushed anyone who threatened his family. And the men who were searching for her, the ones I saw on the streets. "Some were mine," Volkov admitted. "Others were the kidnappers' people. My men have been recalled now that Elena is safe. As for the others..." He smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. "They'll wish they'd never touched my daughter." Marcus believed him. Viktor Volkov might be offering kindness to him, but there was steel underneath. This was a man who protected what was his, and apparently, Marcus was now under that protection. "Can I see Elena?" Marcus asked. "Of course. She's been asking for you." Elena was in a private room, her leg elevated and wrapped in fresh bandages. She looked better already. Color had returned to her face, and the pain lines around her eyes had eased thanks to proper medication. She brightened when Marcus entered. "There you are. I was worried you'd run off." "I thought about it," Marcus admitted, pulling up a chair beside her bed. "This is all kind of overwhelming." "I know, but you'll get used to it." Elena reached out and took his hand. "Marcus, I meant what I said. You saved my life. Not just from the kidnappers, but from dying in that alley. You gave me hope when I had none. That's not something I'll ever forget." "You would have done the same for me," Marcus said, though he wasn't entirely sure that was true. Would a rich girl have risked everything for a homeless boy? He wanted to believe so, but the world had taught him to be cynical. "Maybe," Elena said, "but you actually did it. That makes you a hero." "I'm not a hero. I'm just a kid who got lucky." "No. You're a kid who made a choice. You chose to help when you could have walked away. That's what makes you a hero." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, just being present with each other. Marcus thought about how much had changed in just a few days. He'd gone from being alone and invisible to being part of something. A family. However strange and new it felt. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "Now you get to be a kid again," Elena said simply. "You get to go to school, make friends, have a future. You get to stop surviving and start living." It sounded too good to be true. Marcus had learned that things that seemed too good to be true usually were, but as he looked at Elena's sincere face, at the hope and gratitude in her eyes, he allowed himself to believe, just a little, that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time, the good thing was real. Viktor Volkov arranged for Marcus to stay in one of the guest rooms at his penthouse apartment, a sprawling space at the top of the Volkov Tower, with views that stretched across the entire city. Marcus had never seen anything like it. His entire childhood apartment could have fit in the living room alone. That first night, lying in a bed with clean sheets and a soft mattress, Marcus couldn't sleep. It was too quiet, too comfortable. He was used to the sounds of the city, to the constant vigilance required to stay safe on the streets. This luxury felt foreign, almost threatening in its perfection. He got up and wandered through the apartment, eventually finding his way to the balcony. The city spread out below him, a carpet of light stretching to the horizon. Somewhere down there were the alleys where he'd slept, the soup kitchens where he'd eaten, the forgotten spaces where he'd survived. It felt like another lifetime, even though it had been less than 48 hours since he'd found Elena. "Can't sleep." Marcus turned to find Viktor Volkov standing in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. He offered one to Marcus. "It's too quiet," Marcus admitted, accepting the mug. "I keep waiting for something bad to happen." Volkov nodded, understanding in his eyes. That's the hardest part of escaping a difficult situation. Learning to believe that the escape is real, that you're truly safe now. They stood in silence for a while, sipping their hot chocolate and watching the city. Finally, Volkov spoke again. "I want you to know that this isn't temporary, Marcus. I'm not going to help you for a few weeks and then send you back to the streets. You're part of this family now, for as long as you want to be." "Why?" Marcus asked. "I mean, I'm grateful, but I don't understand. You don't know me. I could be anyone." "You're someone who saved my daughter's life," Volkov said simply. "But more than that, you're someone who showed compassion when you had every reason to be selfish. You shared your food when you were hungry, gave your coat when you were cold, risked your safety when you could have stayed hidden. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are." Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. "My mom used to say I was a good boy, that I shouldn't let the world make me cruel. Your mother was right, and she'd be proud of you." Volkov's voice was gentle. "You honored her memory by staying true to yourself, even when it would have been easier not to." They finished their hot chocolate in companionable silence. When Marcus finally went back to bed, he found sleep came easier. The apartment was still too quiet, the bed still too soft, but somehow it felt less foreign, less threatening. Maybe, he thought as he drifted off, he could get used to this. Maybe he could learn to live again instead of just surviving. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of adjustment. Viktor Volkov hired tutors to help Marcus catch up on 3 years of missed education. It was hard. Marcus had always been smart, but the streets had left gaps in his knowledge that needed filling. He worked harder than he ever had, determined to prove he deserved this second chance. Elena recovered quickly, her leg healing well thanks to the surgery. She and Marcus became inseparable, their shared trauma creating a bond that went deeper than ordinary friendship. They studied together, ate meals together, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. "You know what's weird?" Elena said one afternoon as they worked on math problems in the penthouse library. "A month ago, we lived in completely different worlds. I never would have met you." "Yeah," Marcus agreed. I'd have been that invisible homeless kid you walked past on your way to school." "I wouldn't have walked past you," Elena protested. "Yes, you would have. Everyone does. That's what being homeless means. Being invisible." Elena was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm glad I'm not invisible to you anymore, and you're not invisible to me." "We're both visible now," Marcus said with a small smile. "That's pretty cool." Viktor Volkov kept his promise about school. When Elena was cleared to return to Lakeside Academy, Marcus enrolled alongside her. The prestigious private school was unlike anything he'd experienced. Small classes, engaged teachers, students who actually wanted to learn. It was intimidating at first, but Marcus discovered he loved learning when given the chance. Not everything was easy. Some students whispered about the charity case Viktor Volkov had taken in. There were questions about where Marcus had come from, why he was living with the Volkovs. Marcus learned to ignore the gossip, to focus on his studies and the few genuine friends he made. One of those friends was Daniel Kim, a quiet boy who loved books as much as Marcus did. They bonded over science fiction novels and chess games, and Daniel never asked uncomfortable questions about Marcus's past. "You're different from the other kids here," Daniel observed one day during lunch. "Because I'm poor?" Marcus asked, a bit defensively. "No, because you're real. Most of these kids have never struggled for anything. They don't appreciate what they have, but you do. You notice things, appreciate things. It's refreshing." Marcus hadn't thought about it that way, but Daniel was right. He did appreciate things, the warm meals, the comfortable bed, the opportunity to learn. Things other kids took for granted were precious to him, because he knew what it was like to live without them. As spring turned to summer, Marcus began to truly believe that this new life was real, that it wasn't going to be snatched away. Viktor Volkov formally applied to become his legal guardian, and when the paperwork was approved, Marcus officially became part of the Volkov family. "How does it feel?" Elena asked on the day the adoption was finalized. "To have a family again?" Marcus thought about it. "Scary," he admitted, "but good, really good." That summer, Viktor took them on vacation, a real vacation, to a beach house in California. Marcus had never seen the ocean before, had never felt sand between his toes or tasted salt spray on his lips. He and Elena spent hours building sandcastles and swimming in the waves, acting like the kids they'd never really gotten to be. One evening, as they sat on the beach watching the sunset, Elena said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't helped me that night?" "Sometimes," Marcus admitted. "I'd probably still be on the streets. And you'd be." He couldn't finish the sentence. "Dead or worse," Elena finished quietly. "We saved each other, Marcus. You gave me my life back, and I gave you a home. We're even." "I don't think it works that way," Marcus said with a smile. "But I'm glad we found each other." "Me too." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus thought about his mother, about the promise he'd made to stay human, to not let the world make him cruel. He'd kept that promise, and it had changed everything. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered to the wind, "for teaching me to be good." He couldn't hear her response, but somehow he knew she was proud. 2 years passed. Marcus thrived at Lakeside Academy, his grades climbing until he was at the top of his class. He joined the debate team and discovered a talent for public speaking. He made friends, real friends who valued him for who he was, rather than where he'd come from. Elena healed completely, her leg as strong as ever. She and Marcus remained close, their bond deepening into something that felt like true siblinghood. They protected each other, supported each other, and drove each other to be better. Viktor Volkov proved to be a good father, not just to Elena, but to Marcus as well. He attended their school events, helped with homework, and made time for family dinners despite his busy schedule. He never tried to replace Marcus's mother, but he provided the stability and guidance that Marcus desperately needed. The men who had kidnapped Elena were caught and prosecuted. Victor's security team had tracked them down within weeks of Elena's rescue, and they were now serving long prison sentences. The mastermind behind the plot, a business rival of Victor's, had fled the country, but Volkov's reach was long. Marcus suspected the man would face justice eventually, though Victor never discussed the details. On the 3rd anniversary of the night Marcus had found Elena in that alley, Victor called them both into his study. He looked serious, and Marcus felt a flutter of anxiety. Had something gone wrong? Was this where the dream ended? "I wanted to talk to you both about something important," Victor began. "Marcus, you've been with us for 3 years now. You've grown into a remarkable young man, intelligent, compassionate, hardworking. You've exceeded every expectation I had." "Thank you," Marcus said, still uncertain where this was going. "I've been thinking about the future," Victor continued. "About what happens when I'm gone. Volkov Industries is a family business, and I want it to stay that way. Elena will inherit the company, of course, but I'd like you to be part of that future as well, Marcus. I'd like to make you a full partner, an equal heir alongside Elena." Marcus stared at him, unable to process what he was hearing. "I don't understand. I'm grateful, but I'm not really your son." "Yes, you are," Victor said firmly. "Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. You're part of this family, Marcus, and I want to make that official." Elena was grinning, clearly in on the plan. "Say yes, Marcus. We're better together." Marcus felt overwhelmed, emotions swirling inside him. 3 years ago, he'd been a homeless boy with no future, no hope, no family. Now he was being offered everything he'd never dared to dream of. "I don't know anything about running a business," he said weakly. "You'll learn," Victor replied. "You're smart, you work hard, and you have integrity. Those are the qualities that matter. The rest can be taught." Marcus looked at Elena, who nodded encouragingly. He thought about his mother, about what she would want for him. She'd wanted him to have opportunities, to have a future, to be happy. "Okay," he said finally. "Yes, thank you." Victor smiled, genuine warmth in his expression. "Thank you, Marcus, for being exactly who you are." That night, Marcus stood on the balcony again, looking out at the city that had once been his prison and was now his home. Somewhere down there, other kids were sleeping in alleys, going hungry, struggling to survive. He thought about them, about the boy he used to be. "I won't forget," he promised himself. "I'll never forget what it was like." And he didn't. As he grew older, as he learned the business and took his place alongside Elena in Volkov Industries, Marcus never forgot his roots. He established programs to help homeless youth, created job training initiatives, and personally mentored kids who reminded him of his younger self. He used his second chance to give others their own second chances, paying forward the compassion that had saved his life. 5 years after that night in the alley, Marcus stood in front of a crowd at a charity gala, preparing to give a speech. He was 19 now, a college student studying business and social work, and one of the faces of Volkov Industries' philanthropic efforts. Elena stood beside him, elegant in a formal gown, her hand resting supportively on his arm. Victor sat in the front row, pride evident on his face. Marcus looked out at the assembled crowd, wealthy donors, business leaders, politicians, and began to speak. 7 years ago, I was homeless. I was 14 years old, living on the streets of Seattle, just trying to survive one day at a time. I was invisible, one of thousands of kids who fall through the cracks of our society. I had no future, no hope, no reason to believe that things would ever get better. Then one night, I made a choice. I chose to help someone who needed it, even though I had nothing to give. That choice changed my life. It led me here, to this family, to these opportunities. But more importantly, it taught me something crucial. We all have the power to change someone's life. We all have the ability to choose compassion over indifference. The programs we're funding tonight, homeless shelters, job training, educational support, they're not just about money. They're about seeing people who society has made invisible. They're about giving hope to those who have none. They're about recognizing that every person has value, regardless of their circumstances. I was lucky. Someone saw me, helped me, gave me a chance. But luck shouldn't be the deciding factor in whether a child survives or thrives. We can do better. We must do better. So I'm asking you tonight to join us in this mission. Help us see the invisible. Help us give hope to the hopeless. Help us ensure that no child has to sleep in an alley, wondering if they'll survive another day. Because every person deserves a chance. Every person deserves to be seen. And every person has the potential to change the world, if only someone gives them the opportunity. The applause was thunderous. Marcus stepped back, feeling Elena squeeze his arm in support. Victor was on his feet, clapping with tears in his eyes. After the speech, as donors lined up to pledge their support, Victor pulled Marcus aside. "Your mother would be so proud of you," he said quietly. "I wish she could see the man you've become." "I think she can," Marcus replied. "And I think she's proud. I kept my promise to her. I didn't let the world make me cruel. Instead, I'm trying to make the world a little less cruel for others." "That's all any of us can do," Victor agreed. "Use our blessings to bless others." Later that night, back at the penthouse, Marcus and Elena sat on the balcony one more time, looking out at the city lights. "Do you ever miss it?" Elena asked. "The streets, I mean. The freedom of it?" "No," Marcus said honestly. "I don't miss being cold or hungry or scared. But I do think about it. I think about who I was and how far I've come. And I think about all the kids who are still out there, still struggling. That's why this work matters so much to me." "You're going to change the world, Marcus Webb," Elena said with certainty. "We're going to change it," Marcus corrected. Together, they sat in comfortable silence. Two people who had found each other in the darkest moment and had built something beautiful from that darkness. A family, a purpose, a future. Marcus thought about that night 7 years ago, about the choice he'd made to help an injured girl instead of walking away. It had been the right choice, not because of the rewards it had brought him, but because it had been the human thing to do. His mother had been right. Staying human, staying compassionate, staying good. That was what mattered. Everything else was just details. "Thank you," he whispered to the wind, to his mother's memory, to whatever force had brought him and Elena together that night. "Thank you for giving me a chance to be more than I was." The city sparkled below them, full of stories and struggles, triumphs and tragedies. And somewhere in those streets, Marcus knew, there were other kids like he had been, invisible, struggling, hoping for a chance. He would find them. He would help them. He would make sure they were seen. Because that's what family did. And thanks to a homeless boy and an injured girl who had found each other in an alley, the definition of family had grown to include everyone who needed it.